A husband discovers his wife's secret life with a sugar baby, forcing him to confront betrayal, love, and the fragile reality of their perfect marriage. For 9 years, 2 months, and 11 days, my marriage had been fine. Not magical, not tragic, just fine. We lived a quiet life built on routines. Morning coffee in the same mugs, the same drive to work, the same dinners where we talked about groceries, work stress, and which show to watch next. We were not unhappy, but we were not excited either. We were comfortable, like furniture that had been in the same place for too long. Jennifer and I had learned how to live beside each other without making waves. She traveled for work. I stayed home more. We shared a house, a cat, and a calendar full of repeated plans. Every third Friday, the same restaurant. Every Sunday, the same chores. Life moved forward smoothly, without resistance. People often think betrayal starts with fights, shouting, or distance. But ours didn't. There were no slammed doors, no angry words, no obvious cracks, just silence disguised as peace. That Tuesday afternoon felt no different from any other. I was sitting in my car, waiting for a phone call from the dentist. A crown had fallen out that morning while I was eating breakfast, and I had wrapped it carefully in a napkin, like something fragile that still mattered. My phone buzzed. A voice message. From Jennifer. I didn't think much of it at first. She often left messages, small reminders, errands, things I was supposed to remember but usually forgot. I expected her practical voice, efficient and calm, the voice of a woman managing her life well. I pressed play, and immediately, something felt wrong. Her voice sounded different, softer, warmer, almost playful. There was a closeness in her tone I hadn't heard in years. She spoke slowly, like she wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere else, like she was enjoying being heard. I sat very still. The words themselves were confusing, but it was the feeling behind them that unsettled me. The familiarity, the intimacy, the way she sounded. Alive. Why does she sound like this? I replayed the message. Then again. Each time, my chest felt tighter. I noticed details I hadn't before. The breath between words, the quiet confidence, the ease in her voice. This was not how she spoke to me anymore. Around me, life continued as normal. Cars passed. A mother buckled her child into a car seat nearby. The world didn't pause just because something inside me had shifted. I told myself I was overthinking, that there must be a simple explanation. After all, hadn't our marriage always been fine? But a question kept rising in my mind, impossible to ignore. When was the last time my wife sounded like that with me? I didn't know it yet, but that voice message was not just a mistake. It was a door opening to a truth I had been avoiding. A truth that would force me to look at my marriage not as it was supposed to be, but as it truly was. Sometimes, the most dangerous lies are hidden inside a life that feels good enough. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, as if distance itself might be the problem. Maybe I had misheard. Maybe the words only sounded strange because I wasn't expecting them. But the message continued. Jennifer's voice was low and intimate, wrapped in a softness that didn't belong to me anymore. She spoke as though she were smiling, as though she were remembering something sweet. There was a warmth there, a closeness that felt private, too private. She said his name with ease. She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that comes from comfort, not politeness. Then she mentioned the money, casually, as if transferring thousands of dollars was no different than buying groceries. I froze. Money had always been something we discussed carefully, responsibly. We planned. We budgeted. We reassured each other that we were being smart. And yet, here she was, talking about a transfer as though it were part of a ritual I knew nothing about. I ended the message. Then I played it again. The second time, I noticed the pauses. The way she lingered on certain words. The confidence in her tone, as if she knew exactly how the message would be received. This wasn't rushed. This wasn't careless. This was intentional. My heart began to beat faster, not from panic, but from clarity slowly settling in. I wasn't overhearing something innocent. I was listening to a moment never meant for me. I played it a third time. I heard background noise, cars passing, Footsteps, the open air. She wasn't at work. She wasn't at home. She was somewhere else, somewhere she felt free enough to speak like this. This isn't meant for me. This has never been meant for me. The fourth time, the words felt heavier. Each sentence landed differently, like pieces of a puzzle finally aligning. Her voice carried excitement, anticipation, and something else I hadn't felt from her in a long time: desire. I sat in silence when it ended. Around me, everything was ordinary. The dashboard clock, the faint hum of the engine. My reflection in the windshield looked the same as it always had. But I wasn't the same person who had pressed play the first time. How many times had she spoken like this before? I thought about our conversations. How practical they had become. How efficient. How safe. When had we stopped sounding like people who wanted each other and started sounding like people managing a shared life? I realized then that the message itself wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how natural it sounded. How practiced. As if this version of her had existed for a while, quietly growing while I wasn't paying attention. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't even feel angry yet. I felt awake. And once you hear the truth clearly, you can never unhear it. After the voice message, memories began rearranging themselves in my mind, like old photographs suddenly put in the right order. Things I had dismissed as normal now felt heavier, sharper, impossible to ignore. Jennifer had started wearing a new perfume a few months ago. Something expensive and unfamiliar. It didn't smell like the light, safe scents she used to buy. This one lingered in rooms after she left, bold and confident. When I asked about it, she smiled casually and said a colleague had recommended it. I believed her without hesitation. Why wouldn't I? She also began going to the gym at strange hours. Sometimes early in the morning before sunrise. Other times late at night, long after dinner. She explained that she was trying different class times. I nodded, proud of her discipline, never wondering why the schedule changed so often. I trusted her because trusting was easier than paying attention. There were other changes too, smaller ones. She took longer getting ready when she traveled. She checked her phone more often, angling the screen away from me without realizing it. She smiled at messages she never shared. None of it looked like betrayal. It looked like independence, growth, confidence, and I encouraged it. I told myself this was what healthy marriages looked like. Two people evolving side by side, not questioning every step. I thought love meant giving space. I didn't realize how far apart that space had grown. Looking back, I could see how absent I had been. How often I answered her questions without really listening. How many nights I sat beside her, scrolling through my phone, half aware of her presence. When she talked about her day, I heard words but not feelings. When was the last time I had truly looked at her? She hadn't become distant overnight. She had drifted, slowly, quietly, while I stayed exactly where I was. Our marriage didn't break. Faded. I remembered the way she used to tell stories with her hands, her eyes bright, waiting for my reaction. Somewhere along the way, I stopped reacting. I stopped noticing, and she stopped trying. The signs were there. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to be seen by someone who was looking. I wasn't. Now, every small change felt like a message I had ignored. A quiet request for attention. A warning I waved away because everything was still fine. But fine is dangerous. Fine allows neglect to hide. Fine convinces you that nothing needs fixing. And sometimes, by the time you finally see the signs, the story has already moved on without you. I told myself I wasn't looking for proof. I was just trying to understand. The house was quiet when I opened the laptop, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel louder than it should. The hum of the computer, the distant tick of the clock. Even my breathing felt too noticeable. This was Jennifer's space, her desk, her careful organization. I had never felt the need to enter it before. We shared passwords. We always had. It was a small symbol of trust, something we set up years ago and never thought about again. I typed it in easily, my fingers moving on memory alone. I started with our bank account. First, everything looked normal. Mortgage payments, utilities, groceries. the familiar rhythm of our shared life. Then I saw it. A transfer, $2,000. Then another, and another. They were spaced evenly every 2 weeks like clockwork. Always the same amount. Always marked as a personal expense. I scrolled slowly, my chest tightening with each line. 7 months. 14 transfers. $28,000. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was work-related. Maybe there was an explanation I just hadn't heard yet. But deep down, I knew better. People don't accidentally send the same amount of money to the same place over and over. I sat back, staring at the screen, feeling something shift inside me. This wasn't a moment of impulse. This was a system, planned, repeated, hidden in plain sight because I had never thought to look. I realized then how easily trust becomes blindness. Jennifer handled our finances because she was better at it. What that really meant was that I had chosen not to know. I had chosen comfort over involvement. How many things had I handed over without question? The transfers weren't reckless. They were careful, controlled. The kind of spending someone makes when they believe it's worth it. When they believe they are getting something important in return. I closed my eyes, letting the numbers settle. $28,000 wasn't just money. It was time.
Intention.
Emotion. Whatever was happening, it wasn't casual. I felt a strange calm take over, the kind that comes when denial finally lets go. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being paranoid. The voice message hadn't been a misunderstanding. It had been an entry point. I shut the laptop slowly, as if moving too fast might break something. Outside, the world continued, unaware of the quiet unraveling happening inside my home. I understood then that the truth rarely arrives all at once. It comes in pieces, and each piece asks the same question. How much more are you willing to ignore? Because the moment you start looking, you realize how long you chose not to see. I thought the bank transfers were the worst of it. I was wrong. Later that night, after Jennifer fell asleep, I sat alone with her phone resting in my hands. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried more than glass and metal. I wasn't searching blindly anymore. I was following a trail. Her phone buzzed softly as I unlocked it. Notifications appeared, nothing unusual at first. Then I noticed it. A Gmail account I had never seen before. Not her name. Not a nickname I recognized. Just a clean, carefully chosen address, the kind someone creates when they plan to hide. My heart pounded as I opened it. The inbox loaded slowly, each second stretching longer than the last. Then the emails appeared, and my breath caught in my throat. Hotel confirmations, luxury gift receipts, ride bookings, dinner reservations for 2. All organized, all saved. There was a name repeated again and again. Marcus. I clicked one email, then another. Each message painted a picture I had never imagined. Weekend trips she claimed were work retreats, expensive watches labeled as surprises, and affectionate messages written in a tone she hadn't used with me in years. Then I saw the spreadsheets, neatly formatted. Dates, amounts, notes, columns labeled allowance, travel, gifts. Everything tracked with precision. This wasn't chaos. This was management. Jennifer wasn't sneaking around in the dark. She was running a system. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, as the truth finally formed a shape I could no longer avoid. This wasn't a secret affair driven by reckless passion. This was a paid relationship, a carefully funded connection where money replaced promises and control replaced love. I wasn't just being betrayed, I was being budgeted out. A photo attachment caught my eye. Marcus, young and smiling, standing in a hotel mirror wearing a jacket I recognized. I had complimented her on that purchase months ago. She told me it was on sale. I felt something crack inside me, something quiet but permanent. How long had she been living this double life? Every email felt like a confession she never planned to make. Every receipt was proof of a choice she had repeated again and again. I realized then that the intimacy wasn't just physical, it was intentional, planned, paid for with time and money that once belonged to us. I closed the app, my reflection staring back at me from the dark screen. I barely recognized the man looking back. In that moment, I understood something painful and clear. Love doesn't disappear overnight. It gets replaced, line by line, until there's nothing left but records and regret. And the hardest truth of all is this: when someone hides a second life so well, it means they stopped protecting the first one long ago. Jennifer came home just after sunset. I heard her keys before I saw her, the familiar sound echoing through the house like nothing had changed. She stepped inside, set her bag down, and smiled at me the way she always did, calm, comfortable, unaware that the ground beneath us was already broken. I asked her to sit with me. My voice surprised even me. It didn't shake. It didn't rise. It was quiet, steady, almost gentle. She studied my face, sensing something was different, but she still sat down across from me on the couch we had shared for years. I didn't accuse her. I didn't shout. I simply told her what I knew. I mentioned the transfers, the emails, the name Marcus. The color drained from her face. For a long moment, she said nothing. No denial. No confusión. Just silence. And in that silence, the truth confessed itself before she ever opened her mouth. Finally, she exhaled and looked away. Yes, she said softly. That one word landed heavier than any explanation could have. I asked her why, not angrily, not desperately, just honestly. She folded her hands together, as if preparing to explain something she had practiced many times in her head. She told me she felt invisible. She said our life had become predictable, safe, and quiet. She said she loved me, but she didn't feel alive anymore. With Marcus, she felt seen, desired, powerful, in control. She said the money made her feel needed, not used. I realized then that we were speaking two different languages of pain. I listened as she spoke, really listened, maybe for the first time in years. Her words weren't cruel, but they were sharp. She didn't blame me directly, yet every sentence carried distance. She said she never planned for it to go this far. She said it started as a tension, then turned into something she couldn't let go of. I asked her one simple question. When did you stop choosing us? She looked at me, eyes filled with tears that came too late, and whispered, I don't know. That answer hurt more than any confession, because it meant there was no single moment to fix, no clear mistake to undo. Just a slow leaving, step by step, while we still shared the same roof. There was no dramatic ending to that conversation. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just two people sitting in the quiet aftermath of honesty, realizing that love alone is not always enough to keep two hearts moving in the same direction. And sometimes the truth doesn't break you loudly. It breaks you gently, leaving you to piece together who you are without the life you thought you had. The hotel lobby smelled of polished marble and expensive silence. Everything shined, floors, glass walls, even the smiles of people passing by. I arrived early and chose a seat where I could see the entrance clearly. I didn't know what I expected to feel. Anger, maybe, rage, or the urge to turn around and leave. Instead, I felt calm. Marcus walked in exactly on time. Young, confident, well-dressed in the kind of effortless way money teaches you. I recognized him instantly, not from photos, but from the ease in his posture. This was someone used to being wanted. He spotted me and hesitated for a second before walking over. We shook hands. His grip was firm, respectful. He looked nervous, though he tried to hide it. We sat across from each other, a small table between us. I didn't waste time. I told him who I was. I told him I knew everything. He didn't pretend. He didn't apologize either. He simply nodded and said he had wondered when this moment would come. I asked him what Jennifer meant to him. He paused before answering. He said she was kind, generous, intelligent. He said she treated him well and kept her promises. He never said the word love. That omission said more than anything else. I realized then that I wasn't facing a villain. I was facing a transaction. I asked him if he knew she was married. He said yes. He said she made it clear from the beginning. He told me his role was simple. Be present, be attentive, and never interfere with her real life. Was this what intimacy had become, terms and conditions? I reached into my jacket and placed an envelope on the table. Inside was more money than he had received from her in months. His eyes widened slightly, just for a moment. I told him this was not a threat. It was an ending. I asked him to walk away, cleanly and completely. No messages. No explanations. No future contact. I told him this wasn't about pride or revenge. It was about closing a door that never should have been opened. He looked at the envelope, then at me. He nodded slowly and said he understood. He said he never planned to stay forever. That these arrangements always end eventually. That word, arrangements, echoed in my mind. We stood up. Another handshake. This one felt final. As he turned to leave, I noticed he didn't look relieved. He looked replaced. I watched him disappear into the crowd, realizing something uncomfortable about myself. I had just solved an emotional betrayal with logic and money. Calmly, efficiently, and in that moment, I understood a hard truth. When love becomes a negotiation, everyone walks away poorer, no matter who pays. Jennifer came home late that night, not hurried, not smiling, just quiet. Her steps were slower than usual, like she was carrying news she didn't yet understand. She placed her bag down and stood in the doorway, looking at me as if the house itself felt unfamiliar. She didn't need to say his name. He ended it, she said softly. I nodded and asked her to sit. The space between us felt heavier than before, filled with things already done that could not be undone. She watched my face closely, searching for anger, or blame, or victory. She found none of those. I told her the truth. I told her I had met Marcus. I told her about the hotel, the conversation, and the envelope. I explained that I didn't threaten him or beg him. I simply made sure it ended cleanly, without chaos or humiliation for anyone involved. As I spoke, her expression changed. Confusion first, then shock, then something close to fear. "You planned this?" she asked quietly. I told her yes, not because I wanted control, but because I wanted closure. I told her I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace for both of us. I wanted the affair to stop without leaving wounds that would never heal. I wasn't trying to win her back. I was trying to protect what was left of us. She pressed her hands together, staring at the floor. She said she never imagined I would handle it this way. She thought I would explode, or walk out, or punish her. She said she didn't expect care to look like calculation. I asked her one simple question. Did she feel relieved? She nodded, tears finally falling. She said yes. Relieved, ashamed, exposed. She said when Marcus ended it without explanation, she felt discarded. But when she learned why, she felt something else. She felt seen. Not desired. Not chased. Seen. She said she finally understood how deeply I had loved her, even in silence. How I had paid attention when she thought I wasn't looking. How I chose dignity over destruction, even after being hurt. We didn't embrace. We didn't make promises. We simply sat there, two people facing the truth without illusion. She admitted she had mistaken excitement for fulfillment. I admitted I had mistaken stability for connection. The room was quiet, but it wasn't empty anymore. Because sometimes, the most powerful form of love isn't loud forgiveness or dramatic sacrifice. It's the careful decision to end pain without creating more of it. The house was quiet in a different way now. Not tense. Not hollow. Just honest. Jennifer and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same place where we once planned vacations and talked about ordinary things. Tonight, there were no distractions. No phones. No escape. Only the future. She asked the question first, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you think we should let this end? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I wanted to choose my words carefully. Divorce hung between us, not as a threat, but as a real possibility. Clean. Simple. Final. I told her the truth. I said we could walk away, and no one would blame us. We had enough reasons. Enough pain. Enough proof that things had gone wrong. But I also said this. Leaving would be easier than staying present. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of losing myself. She listened, tears resting quietly on her lashes. She said she didn't want to go back to being fine. She didn't want comfort without connection, or routines without intimacy. She said if we stayed, it had to be different, honest, awake, even if it hurt. I asked her one question that mattered more than all the rest. Are you willing to show up, even when it's uncomfortable? She nodded, not eagerly, not desperately, just sincerely. We talked about counseling, about learning how to listen again, about relearning each other without the roles we had been hiding behind. We talked about boundaries, trust, and time, how none of it could be rushed or assumed. There were no promises of forever that night. No dramatic declarations. Just a mutual decision to stop pretending that silence was peace. We agreed on something simple but difficult. If we stayed, we would stay awake. No more drifting. No more ignoring small changes. No more calling distance normal. As the night deepened, we sat side by side, not touching, but not apart either. The space between us felt like possibility instead of loss. I realized then that marriage isn't saved by grand gestures or perfect behavior. It's saved by two people choosing to be present, again and again, even after disappointment. Because the opposite of betrayal isn't control or forgiveness. It's attention. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for years. Not the quiet of absence or of unspoken tension, but the quiet of understanding, of two people finally noticing what had been right in front of them all along. Jennifer sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, eyes tracing the soft lines of the room we had lived in for nearly a decade. I watched her, realizing how much I had taken for granted. The sound of her laugh, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the subtle rhythm of her presence in the house. Fiscal, our cat, moved with deliberate grace, leaping from the cat tree to the arm of the couch. His yellow eyes followed every movement, alert and watchful. How easily he trusts the world, and yet never stops paying attention, I thought. He had learned to be vigilant without fear, to care without obsession. In some small way, he embodied the lesson we had only just begun to understand. We spoke little that evening. Words felt heavy, weighed down by past mistakes and unspoken regrets. Instead, we listened. I listened to her breathing, to the faint creak of the floorboards beneath her shifting weight, to the quiet presence of the life we had built together. And she listened to me. For the first time in years, it felt intentional. I asked her a simple question, one I hadn't asked in too long. Do you feel alive? She paused. Her gaze dropped to her hands, then slowly lifted, meeting mine with something fragile but honest. I think I'm starting to, she said. I feel seen. I feel noticed. Notice is a gift, I realized, one we had forgotten to give each other. We didn't need to solve everything that night. We didn't need to erase the hurt or pretend the past months had never happened. But in that quiet aftermath, we began to feel again. Small flickers of connection, careful sparks of trust, and a willingness to truly pay attention. It was enough to start. As the night deepened, we moved closer, almost instinctively, shoulders touching, not for comfort alone, but as a silent promise to show up, to witness, to care, to remain present. Outside, the world moved in its usual rhythm, but inside, something had shifted. Love wasn't loud or perfect. It was quiet, persistent, patient. Fiscal jumped onto the windowsill, eyes fixed on a passing shadow, a reminder that vigilance and care were inseparable. I smiled faintly, realizing that marriage, like trust, required attention every day, even when life felt ordinary. Sometimes, the most profound love isn't in grand gestures or fiery passions. It's in the quiet moments, in the simple act of noticing, feeling, and being present. Because if we stop noticing, even the people we love most can quietly slip away.